There's a kind of ache that doesn't scream. It sits just beneath the surface. It doesn't demand attention. It waits. Like a forgotten voice inside your ribs, whispering that something isn't right. That no matter how much you try, how much you give, how quiet you make yourself, it's still not enough, and you don't know why. You wait for the message that never comes. The call, the nod, the hand that says, "Yes, you, I see you, you're chosen." And when it doesn't come, you shrink a little more. You try harder, smile wider, break quieter, hoping that one day someone will point at you and say, "Now, you belong." But they don't, and maybe they can't. Because what you're waiting for isn't a person. It's a permission you were taught to outsource. Somewhere, early on, you learned that your worth was something others give you. That being loved meant being picked. That being enough meant being noticed. So you became excellent at shrinking. You studied every room. You read every face. You made yourself convenient, agreeable, soft. You performed the version of you that they would choose. You trimmed the wildness from your spirit. You swallowed your sadness. You stood still and smiled while everything in you screamed. All for that moment of validation. That look. That nod. That choosing. But what no one told you is that the ones who are chosen are often the ones who stopped waiting to be. There's a power in deciding to no longer beg. Not out of bitterness, not out of pride, but because you finally understand. You've been standing at a door that was never locked. And the only reason you stayed outside is because you thought someone else had the key. But it was always in your hand. Choosing yourself isn't loud. It's not a declaration or a performance. It's quiet. It's subtle. It's the moment you say, "I don't need to be chosen to exist fully." It's when you wear the clothes you love, even if no one compliments you. It's when you speak, even if no one listens. It's when you rest, not because you earned it, but because you deserve it. And yes, it's lonely at first, because the performance gave you a script. It told you who to be, how to act, what to expect in return. Without it, you're left with silence. But in that silence, you'll find something honest, something wild, something you buried long ago, yourself. And when you start living from that place, not for applause, not for permission, not for belonging, you'll notice something strange. The world will start to move around you differently, not because they've finally chosen you, but because you did. So stop waiting. Stop shrinking. Stop rehearsing the version of you that's digestible, likable, safe. The real you, the loud, quiet, soft, sharp, trembling, strong, trembling you, was never meant to audition for love. You are not a backup plan. You are not a consolation prize. You are not a someday, maybe, if only version of worth. You are here. You've always been here. And the moment you choose yourself, the waiting ends. There's a moment when you stop apologizing for breathing. It doesn't come with fireworks. No one claps. There's no one to notice, really. But something inside you, something small and tired and persistent, finally exhales. And in that breath is a quiet refusal. I will not keep shrinking to make others comfortable. I will not bleed just to make the room warmer. You realize how long you've shaped yourself around the comfort of others. Not because you're weak, but because you were taught that peace meant being agreeable, that love meant being silent, that your value came from your ability to smooth out your edges so no one got scratched. So you became a soft version of yourself, polite, predictable, palatable. But softness isn't the same as silence, and peace isn't the same as erasure. You begin to understand the cost. The exhaustion you carry isn't just from your job or your responsibilities or your schedule. It's from constantly abandoning yourself, from editing your truth, from smiling when you want to scream, from staying when everything in you is already halfway out the door. You carry that weight in your shoulders, in your back, in the way you fall asleep too fast, or not at all, in the clench of your jaw, in the dreams where you're running but not moving. And finally, something snaps, not in anger, not in rebellion, but in clarity. You look around and see that the life you've built was never really yours. It was a collage of expectations, a series of choices made through the lens of fear. Fear of being too much, fear of being alone, fear of being abandoned if you ever dared to be honest. So you told the world what it wanted to hear. You became what was asked of you. And you called it maturity. You called it strength. But strength without truth is just performance. And you're tired of performing. Choosing yourself is not a grand gesture. It's not cutting everyone off or starting over. It's the small rebellion of telling the truth. It's looking in the mirror and saying, "I miss you." It's letting your voice tremble and speak anyway. It's doing the thing that terrifies you, not because you're fearless, but because you're finally ready to stop living afraid. You realize the people who truly love you never needed you to shrink. They weren't keeping score. They weren't demanding you be smaller, quieter, easier. You were doing that on your own, out of habit. Out of an old belief that love must be earned by sacrifice. But love isn't payment for your silence. It's the space where you can be loud and raw and unsure and still held. Choosing yourself means stepping back into that space, even if no one's there yet, even if the room is empty. Because you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for the version of you who's been waiting at the edge of your life, wondering when she'd be invited in. So this is the invitation, not to prove, not to earn, not to be good enough for someone else's love, but to belong to yourself again. No more apologizing for your needs, no more delaying your dreams, no more explaining why your heart beats the way it does. This is not about becoming fearless. It's about finally hearing your own voice over the noise. The moment you do, you'll remember. You were never hard to love. You were just waiting for permission to show up as you are. Now you know you don't need it. Choose yourself, again and again, until the world catches up. There's something strange that happens when you begin to choose yourself. The world doesn't know what to do with you. People start to flinch at your boundaries. They look confused when you say no without explanation. They wonder why you've stopped apologizing for your existence, why you don't offer yourself up so quickly, why you're not bending like you used to. You become unfamiliar to them, and maybe even to yourself. Because for so long, your identity was built around the ways you kept others comfortable. You were the helper, the one who understood, the one who stayed late, who forgave early, who never made a fuss. You were the one who said, "It's fine," while carrying everything on your own. You wore strength like armor and silence like proof. Proof that you could endure. Proof that you were good. Proof that you were worthy of love. But it was never love you were receiving. Not really. It was approval, gratitude, utility. And the day you stop offering yourself as useful before you are whole is the day everything shifts. The roles crack. The dynamics change. Some people pull away. Some try harder to pull you back into the version of you they were comfortable with. They say things like, "You've changed." They say it like it's a crime, like becoming more yourself is a betrayal of who you were. But here's the secret. You haven't changed. You've just stopped pretending. The real you, the one who was always there, quiet beneath the layers of performance, is finally taking up space. She's not here to impress. She's not here to manage everyone else's discomfort. She's not interested in being a supporting character in her own life anymore. And that's disorienting. Not just for them, but for you too. because the old habits still tug at you. The impulse to explain yourself, the desire to smooth over tension, the fear of being seen in your full intensity, your full truth. But you're learning to pause, to sit in the discomfort of not being understood, to let others be confused, or disappointed, or even distant, without rushing to fix it. Because choosing yourself doesn't mean everyone claps for you. It often means standing alone in the quiet aftermath of your decision. It means being misunderstood by people who only knew you as the version that made their lives easier. It means grieving the connections that were built on your silence, your self-denial, your willingness to disappear. But the space those people leave behind, that's where real connection grows. Not the kind based on who you pretend to be. Not the kind that depends on your compliance. The kind that sees you, all of you, and stays. You don't have to chase that kind of love. You don't have to earn it. There comes a day when the weight you carry begins to burn, not just your shoulders, but your identity. You've carried so much for so long, it began to feel like your name. You've been the strong one, the steady one, the one others come to when they fall apart, while quietly holding the shattered pieces of your own life behind a smile. And it worked, until it didn't. Until the weight you held for everyone else started burying the parts of you that needed to breathe. Because when you've always been the anchor, you forget you're allowed to float. You start to believe that your worth is measured by how much you can carry, how much you can sacrifice, how quickly you can say, "I'm fine," when you're anything but. You wear emotional labor like a second skin, invisible, unthanked, constant, and the world keeps taking because you keep giving. But inside, something is cracking. It's subtle at first. You feel resentment and don't know where it's coming from. You're tired, but sleep doesn't help. You feel unseen in rooms full of people, like you've become the background of your own life. And one day, you wake up and ask, "Who's taking care of me?" You look around and realize that the world you helped hold together wouldn't even notice if you crumbled. That all the understanding you offered others was never returned. That your presence became expected, not appreciated. And that hurts, deeply. Because you weren't helping for praise. You weren't giving for attention. You did it because you cared, because it's who you are. But who you are is not infinite. You have limits. You have needs. And ignoring them is not noble. It's destructive. Choosing yourself begins here. In the moment you acknowledge that your exhaustion isn't weakness, it's a signal. That your anger isn't selfish, it's sacred. That your tears don't make you broken, they make you real. You begin to see that being the strong one has a cost, and that cost has been your own presence in your life. So you step back. Not because you've stopped loving others, but because you're learning to love yourself too. You begin to say no, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. You stop explaining your boundaries to people who never respected them anyway. You let the guilt come, and you let it pass. You understand that guilt is just the echo of old programming, not a truth you have to obey. And slowly, space opens up. At first it feels wrong. You've built your life around others, their needs, their crises, their emotions. Silence feels selfish, stillness feels unnatural. But in that space you meet someone you haven't seen in a while. You. Not the version who performs strength, not the caretaker, not the fixer. Just you. And you're softer than you remember. Quieter. But there's fire there too. A depth you forgot. A rhythm that's only yours. You don't need to prove anything here. You don't need to earn your right to rest. You just breathe, and it's enough. Others may not understand your shift. They may call it cold, distant, even selfish. But they're not used to you choosing yourself. They're not used to seeing you put your hands down and say, "Not this time." And that's okay. Their discomfort is not your burden, because the ones who truly love you will adjust. They will learn the new rhythm. They will honor the space you now require. And the ones who can't, they were only ever in love with your sacrifice, not your soul. This is how it begins. Not with a scream, but with a whisper. A soft voice inside that says, "You matter too." Listen to that voice. It's the sound of your life returning. And this time, it belongs to you. There's a quiet grief that comes with choosing yourself. No one talks about it. Everyone tells you it's empowering. This act of reclaiming your voice, your boundaries, your presence. And it is. But it also comes with loss. With goodbyes that don't always have closure. With distance that grows in relationships you thought would last forever. With silence from people who once called you family, friend, home. Because when you stop being what others need you to be, some of them will leave. Not because you've become cruel, but because you're no longer convenient. Because you no longer say yes by default. Because you no longer contort yourself to fit the versions of you they preferred. And that hurts more than you expected. You look around and realize how much of your life was shaped by being chosen by them. Friends, lovers, parents, bosses. You were a reflection, not a person. A role, not a whole. And in the moment you start showing up with your full truth, you become too bright, too loud, too much for those who only loved your silence. This is the unspoken part of healing. You will outgrow people. You will be outgrown, and both are allowed. But it doesn't make it painless. You grieve the shared jokes, the late-night talks, the feeling of belonging, even if that belonging required you to disappear. You grieve not only the people but the person you were around them. And maybe that's the hardest part. Letting go of a version of you that you created to survive. You start to wonder, was it all fake? It was real. It was what you needed then. But you don't need it now. Now you need something softer, more honest, less about proving, more about being. And you don't have to hate those who can't meet you there. You can love them from afar. You can remember them with warmth. You can carry what was good without inviting what was harmful. Choosing yourself doesn't mean closing your heart. It means finally opening it, inward. You learn to sit with the ache, to let the empty space exist without rushing to fill it, to allow the loneliness to speak, rather than numb it with noise. And in that space, you hear a new kind of voice, your own, not the one that echoes others' expectations, not the one that calculates every sentence to avoid disappointment. The voice that existed before the world told you who to be. It's softer than you expected, wiser too. It doesn't shout, it doesn't beg. It simply waits, patiently, for you to remember. And when you do, something shifts. You stop reaching. You stop chasing. You stop asking rooms to love you that don't even see you. Instead, you build a room of your own. One where you are not picked. You are present. One where your worth is not performance. It's breath. One where you do not audition, you simply arrive. And those who belong in that room, they find you. Not because you chased them, but because you became visible. That's the power of choosing yourself. It's not loud. It's not a battle cry. It's a quiet funeral for the life you built on other people's approval, and a gentle birth of the life you build from your own truth. Let it be both. Let it hurt. Let it free you. And when the grief comes, don't run from it. It means you're doing it right. It means you finally stopped abandoning yourself to be loved. And that, too, is love. The kind that stays. The kind that begins inside you. The kind that doesn't need to be chosen. Because it's already yours. You don't realize how much of your life you've lived on autopilot until the moment you step off the track. Suddenly, everything is too quiet. The routines you followed without thinking begin to feel like cages. The people you surrounded yourself with feel unfamiliar. Even your own voice sounds strange, like a language you used to speak but forgot. This is what happens when you stop surviving and start existing. You start noticing things you used to ignore. The way your stomach knots in certain conversations. The way your body tightens when someone walks into the room. The way you over-explain, apologize, edit your presence. It's like waking up in someone else's life, only to realize it was your own, just lived at a distance. And you ask yourself, how did I get here? It wasn't all at once. It was small decisions, tiny silences, moments where you didn't speak up, compromises that felt harmless at the time, smiles that didn't reach your eyes, laughs that didn't come from your gut, and slowly, gently, you disappeared from your own story, until now. Now you're learning to come back, not with drama, not with declarations, but with quiet choices. You say no, even when your voice shakes. You take the longer way home, just to feel the air on your face. You pause before answering, just to check in with yourself. You start asking, do I really want this? Do I actually feel safe here? Am I being honest or agreeable? These questions change everything, because when you start living from truth instead of habit, life becomes unfamiliar, and beautifully so. You find new pleasures in solitude. You notice the way light hits your kitchen table in the morning. You take up space in your own day. You let silence stretch without rushing to fill it. You stop needing to be understood and start needing to be real. People around you might not like it. They were used to the version of you who didn't ask for much, the version who folded to keep the peace, the version who agreed out of fear, not alignment. So when you begin to honor your needs, some people feel betrayed. But you're not betraying them. You're just finally being loyal to yourself. Choosing yourself means living slower. It means paying attention. It means no longer offering yourself to anything that makes you smaller. You begin to recognize where your energy goes and why. You notice which conversations leave you drained, which relationships feel one-sided, which dreams aren't yours at all, but were inherited, expected, assumed, and you let go. Not to burn bridges, but to build something true, something rooted in who you are now, not who you had to be. It's disorienting, lonely sometimes. But there's peace too, a deep peace that doesn't depend on validation, a stillness that doesn't feel empty, but full of self, of presence, of knowing. You are no longer a stranger to your own life. You are awake. And in that awakening, you realize this. You never needed permission to belong to yourself. You only needed time, space, silence, and the willingness to listen to the truth inside you, the one that's been whispering all along. So listen, live, choose yourself, not once, but every moment you remember who you are. This is not a phase. It's not rebellion. It's not selfishness. It's the beginning of being. And this time, it begins with you. There's a myth we carry, that to be loved, we must first be easy. Easy to be around. Easy to understand. Easy to forgive, to accept, to keep close. We smooth our edges, soften our voices, and trim our truth. Not because we are liars, but because we are afraid. Afraid that our fullness will scare people away. That our contradictions make us unlovable. That if we are not easy, we will be left behind. And so we perform palatability. We anticipate needs before they are spoken. We laugh at jokes that don't land. We offer silence where we should have spoken. We become careful, strategic, manageable, and the more we perform, the more disconnected we become. From others, from joy, from ourselves. But the truth is, Love was never meant to be earned through erasure. The people who can only hold you when you are convenient are not holding you. They are holding the version of you that makes them comfortable. And comfort is not connection. It's not intimacy. It's proximity with conditions. You deserve more than that. Choosing yourself means giving up the role of being easy. It means accepting that you are complex, that your needs may sometimes be inconvenient, that your healing may not be linear, that your presence may not always be digestible for everyone. It means allowing yourself to be seen, not just in the curated light, but in your shadow, your questions, your confusion. It means not folding every time someone winces at your truth. It means being willing to disappoint others rather than abandon yourself. And yes, some people will leave. But let them. Let those who cannot sit with your fullness drift away. Let the spaces that demanded your silence grow distant. Let the rooms that required your pretending become empty. In their place, something more honest will emerge. You, the you who doesn't apologize for existing. The you who asks for what you need without shame. The you who says, "This is who I am today," even if it's messy, uncertain, or incomplete. Because wholeness isn't perfection, it's presence. And presence begins with permission. Not from others, from you. You give yourself permission to take up space, to speak slowly, to be misunderstood, to not explain, to evolve, to contradict yourself, to grow in directions no one expects. You give yourself permission to stop fixing things that aren't yours to fix, to walk away from conversations that drain your soul, to rest without earning it, to heal without making it a performance. This is not ease. This is depth. And depth is what your soul has been asking for all along. You were not born to be simple. You were not born to be agreeable. You were not born to be molded into someone else's version of enough. You were born to live in truth. And that truth will sometimes be loud. Sometimes it will be still. Sometimes it will contradict the version of you others prefer. But that's okay. Because you didn't come here to be liked by everyone. You came here to remember yourself. So drop the mask. Let go of the act. Be the person you are when no one is watching, and then let that person speak, move, breathe into the world. The ones who can hold that version of you, they are your people. But more importantly, you are finally yours. That's what choosing yourself means. Not ease, but truth. And in truth, you are finally home. There's a fear that lives under the surface of almost everything we do. It's the fear that if we show up as we truly are, we won't be loved. So we manage. We calculate how much to reveal, how loudly to speak, how visibly to feel. We stay just small enough to fit inside the expectations of others. We pretend not to need, not to hope, not to hurt. And we tell ourselves it's safer this way. But what kind of safety demands your silence? What kind of love demands your hiding? The truth is, when you spend your life trying not to be too much, you end up becoming not enough for yourself. Because in shrinking for them, you vanish for you. And eventually, something inside you begins to knock. Gently at first, like a memory trying to find its way back. A thought, a whisper, a question. Is this it? You start to notice how lonely it feels to be surrounded by people who don't really see you. How tiring it is to play a role you never auditioned for. How painful it is to know that the love you receive is for a version of you that doesn't fully exist. This is where choosing yourself begins again. Not in rebellion, not in anger, but in longing for something real. For a life that feels like yours. For relationships where your joy doesn't feel like too much, and your pain isn't treated like an inconvenience. So you begin to tell the truth. Quietly, at first. You say what you mean, Even if your voice trembles, you admit when something hurts, even if it makes the air heavy. You let your laugh be loud, your silence be full, your presence be honest. And yes, people might flinch. Not everyone is ready for the real you. Some loved the version who agreed, who smiled, who held everything together without asking for anything in return. That version was easier. But easier is not the same as alive, and you are ready to be alive again. Choosing yourself means being willing to feel the awkwardness of honesty, to sit in the discomfort of no longer performing, to let others be disappointed if it means you are finally whole. Because being loved while pretending is a slow kind of heartbreak, and you are not here to ache quietly. You are here to live fully. So let the mask fall. Let the words come out imperfectly. Let the people who only loved your silence make their way to the exits. This is not your failure. It's your emergence. You were never meant to be palatable. You were meant to be real. The world might not reward you for this, but your soul will. And that is the kind of validation that stays. You'll start to breathe easier, to move slower, to laugh deeper. Because you're no longer acting. You're arriving. And yes, some days will still be hard. You'll still reach for the old mask out of habit. You'll still feel the tug of old roles, old fears. But now you'll know. You'll know when you're leaving yourself, and you'll come back faster, softer, stronger. Because you've seen what it costs to abandon who you are, and you've decided that you're worth staying for. That's what choosing yourself is. A decision. Not once, but daily, hourly, moment by moment. And the more you choose you, the easier it becomes to recognize what was never love, only performance. You're not here to perform. You're here to be, fully, honestly, and without apology. It's strange how easily we forget ourselves. Not all at once, but slowly, subtly. 1,000 tiny choices made in the name of love, peace, or practicality. You trade your truth for harmony. You swallow your voice to avoid conflict. You nod when you want to scream. And eventually, you begin to wonder where you went. You look in the mirror and don't quite recognize the reflection. There's something missing. Not in your features, but in your eyes. A dullness, a distance, a kind of quiet sorrow that doesn't come from pain alone, but from disconnection. Not from the world, but from yourself. You used to know who you were, before the edits, before the masks, before you learned that parts of you were too much, too loud, too tender to be welcomed. You used to dream with both hands open, speak without checking the room, laugh without rehearsing, hurt without shame. Then life taught you to be careful. And so you became careful. You became watchful, strategic, composed. You became everything the world applauded, and nothing you remembered. But there's always something that doesn't forget. Somewhere deep within you, there is a version of yourself untouched by performance. A voice that hasn't been rehearsed. A truth that hasn't been approved by the crowd. You don't need to invent this part of you. You just need to return to it. Choosing yourself is not a makeover. It's a recovery. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about reclaiming someone you left behind. You begin by listening. To the tension in your chest when you say yes but mean no. To the fatigue that follows every act of pretending. To the grief that lingers after every moment of self-betrayal. These are not flaws. They are signals. Your body is wiser than your performance. It remembers. It alerts. It calls you back. And when you begin to honor those signals, the world shifts. Not because the world changes, but because you do. You stop abandoning yourself for comfort. You stop silencing your truth for approval. You stop asking for permission to be who you already are. And slowly, you begin to return. To mornings that feel honest. To relationships that see the real you. to choices that align with your spirit, not just your survival. It doesn't happen all at once. Some days you'll falter. You'll reach for the mask. You'll slip back into old roles. But now you know the way back. And that knowing changes everything. Because once you remember how it feels to be true, even for a moment, you can never unfeel it. That moment becomes your compass. And every time you listen to it, you come home. Not to the version of you that others applauded, but to the one you missed. The one who didn't need to be fixed. The one who only needed to be chosen by you. So return to your fire, to your softness, to your contradictions, your courage, your questions. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a person to be remembered. And the world needs the version of you that lives behind the edits. The one that says yes with her whole chest. The one that cries when it hurts. The one that takes up space without apology. That version isn't gone. She's just waiting. And now, finally, you're coming back for her. That is the work. That is the point. That is what it means to choose yourself. There's a strange kind of clarity that arrives when you stop begging for belonging. Not because you've given up on love, but because you finally understood what love isn't. It isn't sacrifice without return. It isn't shrinking until you disappear. It isn't staying quiet just to be kept around. It isn't proving your worth over and over to people who've already decided to overlook you. You realize how much energy you've spent trying to be chosen. How often you walked into rooms hoping someone would see you, pick you, hold space for you. How often you twisted yourself into versions of belonging, only to feel more alone than before. That loneliness? It wasn't because no one was there. It was because you weren't. You'd left yourself behind in every room where being accepted meant being edited. You left behind your truth to make others comfortable. Left behind your joy because it was too loud. Left behind your sadness because it made others uncomfortable. And little by little, you became a version of yourself that was almost loved, but never fully known. Until now. Now, something has shifted. You no longer crave the rooms that require your silence. You no longer feel at home in places that ask you to be less. You begin to crave something else entirely. Authenticity over approval. Connection over convenience. Depth over comfort. Choosing yourself in these moments is not dramatic. It's quiet. It's turning down invitations that feel performative. It's saying no without guilt. It's walking away from conversations where you must translate your feelings into something digestible. And it's terrifying. Because letting go of false belonging often means standing alone for a while. But in that space, you finally hear your own voice again. Not the one you curated for others. The one that speaks your truth without apology. The one that reminds you, you were never meant to be a chameleon just to survive. You were meant to be seen in your wholeness, or not at all. And slowly, the fear fades. You begin to realize that what felt like rejection was redirection. That the silence that followed your boundaries was not punishment. It was purification. The absence of the crowd made room for clarity. And in that clarity, you see yourself, not as someone waiting to be picked, but as someone finally arriving. You begin to build your life not from who stayed, but from who you've become. And what you build now is different. It doesn't chase. It doesn't shrink. It doesn't apologize. It holds. It honors. It heals. Choosing yourself means accepting that not everyone will understand you, and letting that be okay. It means making peace with the loss of people who only knew the edited version of you. It means trusting that what you lose in performance, you gain in truth. This is what freedom feels like. Not ease, not certainty, but honesty. The kind that doesn't require validation. The kind that doesn't flinch. The kind that says, I know who I am, and I will not leave me again. That's the promise now. Not to be perfect, not to be chosen, but to be here, fully, authentically, relentlessly, because you've spent too long waiting to be seen. Now, you're choosing to see yourself. And in that, you are finally free. You don't notice it right away. The peace. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It doesn't come crashing through your walls like some dramatic breakthrough. It arrives slowly, like light creeping through closed blinds. Software steady, barely noticeable at first. But it's there. One morning, you realize you didn't wake up with that pit in your stomach. One evening, you catch yourself smiling and you don't immediately question it. One conversation, you speak your truth, and you don't feel the familiar sting of guilt right after. This is what it looks like to choose yourself enough times that it starts to become who you are, not just what you do. For so long, you thought choosing yourself meant losing everything else, that it was a betrayal, that it was selfish, that it would leave you empty, unloved, abandoned. And for a while it felt like that. Because the old life, the one built on pleasing, performing, and pleasing some more, had to fall apart first. But now, something else is growing in its place. Stillness, clarity, a strange kind of confidence. Not the loud, assertive kind, but the quiet knowing that you're not at war with yourself anymore. You no longer argue with your own feelings. You no longer beg yourself to tolerate what drains you. You no longer carry conversations you don't want to be in, relationships that feel like erosion, responsibilities that cost you your spirit. And what's left isn't just peace, it's power. Not the kind that dominates or performs, the kind that anchors, the kind that says, I don't need to prove myself to be real, the kind that doesn't seek approval to exist. This version of you, the one who pauses, who chooses, who listens inwardly, isn't born from perfection. It's born from exhaustion, from hitting the walls so many times you finally asked what was on the other side, from refusing to live in cycles that made you question your own worth. And now you see it. You are not difficult. You are just in spaces too small for your truth. You are not broken. You are just shaped to serve, not to shine. You are not lost. You were just far from yourself. But now, you're home. And it doesn't always look like joy. Sometimes it looks like choosing solitude over company that leaves you empty. Sometimes it looks like saying no without explaining why. Sometimes it looks like crying in the shower and knowing it's not weakness. It's release. Peace isn't a destination. It's a relationship with yourself. And like any relationship, it takes presence. It takes choosing. It takes care. You don't arrive at peace. You return to it again and again. With every honest boundary, with every truth you speak aloud, with every moment you say, I matter here. Choosing yourself isn't the end of love. It's the beginning of real love. The kind that doesn't demand your disappearance. The kind that doesn't collapse when you're no longer convenient. The kind that starts from within and spills outward. So when you feel the stillness, trust it. It's not a fluke. It's not a pause before the next storm. It's the reward of coming home to yourself and deciding to stay. There is a sacredness in starting over. Not in the dramatic sense. The job quit, the relationship ended, the city left behind. Those can happen, yes, but that's not what I mean. I mean the quieter kind of beginning. The kind no one else sees. The kind where you wake up one morning and realize you're done abandoning yourself. No announcements, no fireworks, just a shift, a subtle, powerful pivot, from tolerating to noticing, from performing to being, from people-pleasing to self-trusting. And it's terrifying. Because if you've spent your whole life shaping yourself around other people's comfort, standing still in your own truth can feel like rebellion. You'll doubt yourself. Not once. Not twice, constantly. You'll second-guess your boundaries. You'll wonder if you're being too harsh, too selfish, too sensitive. You'll replay old beliefs like broken records. I'm too much. I should be grateful. What if they leave? But this time, something is different. This time, the voice that questions is not alone. There's another voice, faint but steady, and it says, what if you're not too much? What if they were never enough? This is how it begins. A war between the self you were told to be and the self you actually are. One performs safety, the other craves truth. And eventually, you realize you can't live divided forever. You either keep betraying yourself for peace that isn't real, or you risk discomfort in service of your own wholeness. You choose the risk. Not all at once. Not boldly, but gradually, in moments. You let the silence stretch longer than you used to. You speak without rehearsing. You stop apologizing for having feelings, for needing space, for being someone with depth. You stop translating yourself for people who never intended to understand. And this is where loneliness changes shape. It no longer feels like emptiness. It feels like clarity. Because once you stop performing, you see clearly who was there for the mask, and who can hold the real. It hurts, but it heals. Because now you know. Your presence is not a product. Your love is not a transaction. Your time is not for proving. It's for becoming. You begin to enjoy your own company again. You take long walks and don't rush back. You read books that make you feel seen. You let your phone go silent. You stare out the window and realize you're not waiting anymore. You're living. And life, real life, isn't always loud. It's soft, subtle, rooted. It's drinking your coffee slower, saying no without explanation, feeling joy and not shrinking it to make others comfortable. You choose yourself in these small, invisible ways, and those small ways add up. They become a new life, one not built on who others told you to be, but on who you've remembered yourself to be. No audience, no applause, just you. And for once, that's enough. That's more than enough. Because when you choose yourself again and again, you stop living from fear, and you begin living from truth. And the truth is this: you were never too much. You were never asking for too much. You were simply trying to belong in places not meant for your becoming. Now you know better. And knowing better is the beginning of freedom. So start again. Even if your hands shake, even if your voice trembles, even if no one claps, start again. For you. That's the only reason that was ever real. Somewhere along the way, you stopped asking yourself what you wanted. Not because you didn't care, but because you were too busy surviving. Too busy tending to the needs of others. Too busy making sure everyone else felt comfortable, held, heard. You built a life that ran like a well-oiled machine. You became responsible, reliable, respected, and exhausted. Not the kind of exhaustion that sleep can fix, but the kind that comes from disconnection. The kind that grows when you spend years living according to everyone else's story while yours sits in the background, untouched. You forgot how to dream. Or maybe you remember dreaming, but somewhere along the line it started to feel foolish, impractical, selfish. You convinced yourself you were content. You told yourself this was good enough, that joy was a luxury you didn't have time for. But joy isn't a luxury. Joy is a compass, and when you abandon joy, you lose direction. Choosing yourself is the act of turning back toward that compass. It's the quiet, radical decision to stop living from obligation and start living from alignment. It doesn't always look like leaving your job or moving across the world. Sometimes it looks like closing your laptop and going outside, saying no to the meeting, saying yes to the dream you've buried for so long you almost forgot it had a pulse. It looks like asking, what would make me feel alive right now? And trusting the answer, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. Because the truth is, you don't need anyone's permission to enjoy your life. You don't need a reason to rest. You don't need to explain your joy. You just need to remember that your life is yours, not theirs, not your past's, not your traumas, yours. And if it's yours, then you get to build it from your soul, not from the scraps of what others left behind. So you start small. You make space for music that moves you, for food that nourishes you, for silence that heals you, for work that matters, for love that doesn't feel like begging. And as you make space, life responds. Not always in the ways you expect. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes things fall apart. But what breaks is often what was never real to begin with. What remains is truth. And in that truth, you find yourself again. Not as a role or a function or a label, but as a living, breathing, becoming thing. You start to feel it in your bones. The shift, the reclamation, the unlearning of who you were told to be. And underneath all that noise is someone who never stopped wanting. Someone who still believes in wonder. Someone who's not here to just survive the week. Someone who's here to live. So live. Clumsily, if you must. Quietly, if that's all you can manage today. But live in a way that honors your becoming. Live in a way that feels like coming home. You don't have to know where it's all going. You just have to know where you are. And you're here. Finally. Willing. Awake. And that is everything. Choosing yourself means remembering your joy isn't a disruption. It's a return. To truth. To breath. To life. To you. There is a kind of grief that comes not from what you lost, but from what you never gave yourself. You feel it in quiet moments. When the house is still. When the phone is silent. When no one is asking anything of you. It rises like a memory, but not of something that happened. A memory of something that could have. All the times you said yes when you meant no. All the dreams you tucked away because they didn't make sense to someone else. All the boundaries you never set because you were afraid of being difficult. All the parts of yourself you left behind to be loved. And now here you are. With a life that might look whole from the outside, but feels scattered on the inside. Because no one told you that abandoning yourself, even in small ways, leaves a mark. And that mark is grief. But grief can be sacred too. It's what happens when we begin to feel again. When we start to come home to ourselves and realize how long we've been gone. So don't run from it. Let it ache. Let it teach. Let it open you. Choosing yourself after years of self-abandonment isn't just a triumph. It's a reckoning. It's standing in front of the mirror and seeing not just who you are, but who you never allowed yourself to be. And it hurts. Not because you were wrong, but because you were scared. And scared people don't make bad choices. They make the best choices they can to survive. So forgive yourself. Not just for the big things. Forgive yourself for the shrinking, for the pretending, for the overgiving, for the moments you didn't know how to say, I matter too. Because you do. You always did. And now, instead of mourning the life you didn't live, you can begin to build the one you still can. That's the miracle of choosing yourself. It doesn't require perfection, only presence. You show up for the joy, for the hurt, for the mess, for the healing, for the dream you thought was too late to dream. You begin to trust your own timing, not the world's, not the internet's, not your family's, yours. Because your path isn't supposed to look like anyone else's. It's supposed to feel like you. And when it finally does, you'll understand. The grief was never your enemy. It was your guide, your invitation, your way back. It was saying, come closer, not to what was lost, but to what's still waiting. to the voice you buried, to the self you softened, to the fire you tamed, to the hunger you silenced. They're all still there, patient, forgiving, waiting for you to remember. So remember, not with shame but with reverence, because becoming isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about recovering what's been forgotten. And nothing is more worthy of recovery than you. That's what this work is, not self-improvement, self-reclamation. Choosing yourself means choosing to feel what you've spent years avoiding, and in doing so, choosing to be fully, deeply, beautifully alive. There comes a point in the journey where you realize there is no finish line, no final version of you, no ultimate polished self who has everything figured out, who always makes the right choices, who never falters, never questions, never aches. And at first, that might terrify you, because you've spent so long trying to arrive, at peace, at worthiness, at some imagined destination where the pain is gone and the path is clear. But then something shifts. You stop chasing completion and start honoring the process. Because choosing yourself was never about arriving somewhere. It was about returning, again and again, to the only place that's ever been real. Here, in this breath, in this moment, in this body. You begin to see your growth, not in how perfect your boundaries are, but in how quickly you come back to them when you forget. Not in how loud your voice is, but in how honestly you speak, even when it shakes. Not in how often you feel joy, but in your willingness to feel everything without running. This is what it means to become. Not to fix, but to feel. Not to master, but to meet. Not to conquer yourself, but to hold yourself with such tenderness that even your mistakes feel sacred. You are not here to be flawless. You are here to be real. And realness looks like contradiction. Like courage laced with fear. Like grace tangled with grief. Like dancing with the parts of you you used to exile. You were never broken. Just separated from yourself, from your truth, from the love that doesn't ask you to perform. Now, you're coming home. Not to a perfect life. Not to a sanitized version of healing. But to a life lived in truth. A life where you choose yourself. Not just in moments of clarity, but in the mess, in the noise, in the pause before the next inhale. You make room for the full spectrum. You hold space for your joy and your anger. You allow your ambition and your rest. You welcome your softness and your strength. You no longer split yourself to be accepted. You no longer abandon your body to be seen. You no longer trade your truth for proximity. Instead, you become whole, not by addition, but by integration. And that wholeness, it isn't loud. It doesn't demand anything. It simply is, a quiet knowing, a steady breath, a gentle return to what's always been yours. So no, there is no finish line, but there is freedom. The kind that whispers, you are allowed to be fully here, fully human, fully alive. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not wrong for feeling lost along the way. You are here, and that is more than enough. Keep choosing yourself. Keep coming home. Keep breathing into the sacred, messy, stunning now. Because this moment, this is the destination. And you've already arrived.